Site that we utilise for this group is wpsheffield.com. I'm not actually screen sharing anymore. There we go. So we've got a hashtag as well, hashtag WPChef, and the Twitter account is also at WPChef. So if you want to know more about the upcoming event in August, this is the main place to look, but also the Twitter handle and the hashtag, or the mailing list, which is down at the bottom here, is where you need to sign up. So,
if you saw the Eventbrite in there,
the Eventbrite is, yeah, we do try to, and this is a recent thing, because before we used to use Lanyard for ticketing, which we used for about 12 months and realised it was a really big waste of time. So we've now gone back to Eventbrite, and Eventbrite, you can email everyone that came last month or the month before and remind you that events are coming up. So either or is fine, but what tends to happen is I'll email everyone on this mailing list, everyone on the Eventbrite, and also tweet about any upcoming events in terms of when they're happening. Depending on how much time I've given myself, I might also create a Google event and also a Lanyard page, but really that's more than enough. I mean, we tend to average about 15 people to this group, so any more than that we're going to have to start looking for a new venue, because it is getting pretty full tonight anyway. But for the hack day we are hoping to really get at least 30-40 people. So. And the last thing we wanted is when it was the 10-year anniversary of WordPress, we had a party, well not a party as such, but an event in the same venue, and we had about 11 people. So we don't really want to repeat that. So what I'm going to do, rather than jump straight into my talk about customizers, we're going to go through WordPress news. Now this is something that we often do when there's been quite a lot of news in the WordPress sort of community. Last month there wasn't actually that much to go over. I remember I think there was one real key article to cover. So instead this time I've picked a few out that I've read over the past month, and if there's any that you guys want to get up on screen, just let me know. So the first one I want to start with is the WooCommerce news. So WooCommerce/WooThemes are obviously a theme and e-commerce company, and they were recently purchased by, or acquired by, Automattic, who we all know that Tom works for today. And it was a shock to a lot of people, because obviously WooThemes is one of the first ever theme shops. WooThemes is a premium model, it's incredibly successful. It was always seen that it could stand alone. And this is one of the most intriguing blog posts that I've read about the acquisition, and it's called What Next for WooCommerce. It's really interesting because it goes over just how many websites use WooCommerce, and it also stipulates that Automattic paid around 30 million to buy the WooThemes business, which is a hefty sum, but when you think about it, they weren't just buying a product or a plugin, they were also purchasing a team of quite a lot of, I think maybe 20 or 30 people, maybe more, am I right, Tom?
60 people. I'd also note the 30 million figure is handkerchief math. Automattic haven't actually announced how much they pay, even I, using internal blogs, don't know how much it costs.
Yeah, this is your typical Silicon Valley mathematics, where they've guessed at how much on average it was spent. But to be fair, I think probably WooThemes would be valued at something like that, let's be honest. What does it mean for the future? Well, if you're a WooCommerce or WooThemes customer, in the short term, very little. They didn't announce that all WooThemes were suddenly free. They haven't announced that all WooCommerce add-ons are suddenly free, which a lot of people assumed they would, so you're not losing money by holding on to those subscriptions. WooThemes can only get better really in this scenario, and WooCommerce especially is the reason that this deal happened. Because if we go a bit further down, the idea is that WordPress.com can inherit a lot of the Woo themes and especially the WooCommerce products. So if you imagine WordPress.com, which is a closed network, if you could set up a store on WordPress.com similar to Shopify or some of the other online retail stores, as easy as you could installing WooCommerce onto your personal site, then that's a big win for Automattic. So there's a lot in there, but let's be honest, it could take years before something like this happens. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions or queries or discussions around that. Personally, I think it's a good thing. I was shocked when it happened. I've since talked to people in the industry who said that they've known about it for months and just were surprised that it didn't leak. I think the reason it didn't leak is no one believed it because they were so. The two companies have been so opposite for so long that it really didn't seem like a match. So that came out, and I'm really pleased about it. Again, this post is called wpin.me. What's next for WooCommerce. It's a great little post about all the odds and ends, and it was posted quite far into the acquisition, so you can get a better update. So
it'd be interesting to see sort of like why they decided to sell. Because sort of like given that WooCommerce and Woo Themes itself is one of the pioneers,
yeah.
Stuff in like, let's be honest with you, commercialising WordPress to the point where everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The business model must be sort of like, you know, flawed to a point where sort of like they're willing to accept an offer from Automattic. Because
what's interesting is
the business seemed quite good.
If a business is really
they
profitable,
could
then
quite
they're not
happily
going
have
to sell.
stayed as is.
If a business
They
is
weren't.
not profitable and there's something wrong, then they'll sell. They'll
At the end of the day, it was not to money.
that's the thing. Technically, Woo Themes as a business is more profitable than Automattic because of the debt and the way that they're structured and the way that they're funded.
But then Automattic are buying a lot of companies, aren't they? Because obviously, quite a big game as well.
Yeah.
I'm thinking now sort of like Woo Themes. So it's
Well, good for the people,
are
obviously.
we sort of like reaching a point where the bubble's going to burst with WordPress? Or are we now sort of like just thinking that WordPress is now sort of like trying to sort of like take
Well, I think they're going to hoover up as much talent as possible, which is smart, and they're all because they're going to be the go-to place for WordPress solutions, which is no bad thing. If I had a large enough budget, I would definitely hire Automattic as the people to support my WordPress solution. So, and if it's an e-commerce platform, then if WooCommerce can become big enough to run multi-million-dollar stores, then great. And I think it could only do that with WooCommerce, with Automattic. So that was that one. Try and rush through these. The next one is linked, and it's about our friend Mike, who used to come to this group every now and again, bless him. And I mentioned earlier to Ian, do you recognise him now? Okay.
All I see is a semi-cousin style haircut.
Okay. Mike and his Lego haircut used to come to the WordPress Sheffield group quite a bit. I think he moved or something, so he's not. But he works at Woo Themes, and he developed while he was working there. He developed something called WP Job Manager, and it made sense that Automattic would also acquire that. So they now own WP Job Manager, which was one of Mike's projects that he built outside of Woo Themes, and I think it was based on WooCommerce to an extent. And this is a great post about it because it's actually an interview with Mike. You can see that it goes further down, and he talks about how he didn't want to leave Woo Themes, he wanted to keep using WooCommerce, and especially WordPress. And Mike was one of the volunteers at last year's WordCamp Sheffield that we had. He also obviously worked for Woo Themes, who were one of the sponsors, so it worked both of us for us. So that's a good one. So I mean, some of the comments are a bit controversial, as they always are with this sort of thing. But I think it's great that Automattic also sucked up that project, because again, that's something that can go on WordPress.com. And that's probably one of those plugins that will probably be released for free. A really decent job manager is a good plugin to give away on the repo.
There'll be add-ons, won't it?
Yeah, exactly.
60 quid for this. And
Right, next up was EDD or Easy Digital Downloads, and I love its whale with legs logo. I don't know, quite scary, isn't it? Terrifying. So they, Easy Digital Downloads is another e-commerce platform for WordPress, but specialises just in digital products. And they decided that they would give away all of their themes for free and concentrate on monetizing the core product. So essentially that's it. I thought that was great because Easy Digital Downloads has grown exponentially since it launched. It's enormous now, and they're making, essentially the point of this post is they're making enough money from the core product that they don't need to sell the themes. So if you have an ebook, if you have any sort of online store that only specialises in digital goods, you now don't have to hire one of us agencies or developers to create you a site that's compatible with EDD, because they give away free themes. That's the main point of it. Because it was incredibly difficult when you were using EDD before to get everything out of it. You had to develop a custom WordPress theme. You can get them for free now from these guys. So it's a really smart business decision, and it also seems to be a change in the tide in the way that these themes are given out. So obviously we can't stand here and read it all out. Markdown is, I mean, Ian actually reminded me of this earlier when he was writing something, I'm not sure what it was, before the event started. And if you use WordPress to blog and you are perhaps a developer or someone who knows Markdown, the WYSIWYG editor can be incredibly frustrating. So by implementing a Markdown solution, you can get all the benefits of nice, clean, easy to write code, because all of these plugins not only allow you to write in Markdown for any future posts, they'll convert all of your old posts into Markdown. And Markdown is just a format that, oh look at this, we've got a bit of blue host going on. Markdown. So Markdown just allows you to write nice and easy, simple, easy to read, easy to consume, and there's no formatting or HTML required to do it. So for example, Jetpack's got it built in, and now we all hate Jetpack, probably for the wrong reasons, but it is a great plugin if you can cut out a lot of the book and just select the items that you want it to do. Typewriter I've never used, but again, all of these plugins take your old posts and will convert them into Markdown. PrettyPress is very similar to the Ghost system, so the Ghost blogging system where you've got your Markdown on the left and your site on the right. And I guess the point of it is that I've recently started to switch to Markdown to write notes and to write information from all sources, that because it doesn't need to be formatted. I don't need to select a bit of text and select it as bold in Markdown. We can just put a couple of stars around it. So that's leading me to want to do it also on my blog. I haven't yet switched because I haven't yet chosen a Markdown plugin for it. So the current winner is Jetpack, so I'm already using Jetpack to CDN my images, but I would highly recommend anyone that blogs to at least look at some of these options.
What is that front end editor? That's now in release, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's basically what you get on GitHub. So it's
I believe there's slight differences. They're doing like some complicated lists, some crazy captions.
So there was the problem is that when Markdown was originally set out, there were edge cases that were just unhandled, like what happens if you nest certain things together, and there's a spec which I think Jeff Atwood tried to push forward and had a ton of naming problems in collaboration with like GitHub and a lot of other people for how we do blocks of code could come in Markdown. I think that was the last name we got given, but I'd say if you look at common Markdown, that's what the most popular things tend to be anyway. Not just
the Markdown seems to grow every year. The only thing I've ever struggled with is clients hate it. We've tried to get clients writing in Markdown and they're like, what is this shit? It really is just for developers, people who at least understand code. But I much prefer it to write blog posts in now. You are limited in a way because you can't throw in HTML and hack it around a little bit, but that's a good thing. You know, in the days of responsive, you don't really want to be doing that.
Yeah, conversely, there's publishers and journalists who are using it for developers, but they tend to be more on the sort of
they
professional sort of.
the writers love it because it distracts. So they don't have the distraction of worrying about having to, again, select a bit of text and convert it into a heading. They just put a couple of hashtags in.
So I've been doing sort of like a daily log on the Wiki.
Yes.
For a while now, just so that I've got, if I find a decent website, the whatever test I'm doing, I make a note of it there and then, and it's in context and the work that I'm doing. And then I can then see what I did before, what I did after, and stuff like that. So I've been using that for a while. Of course, it's different to the Wiki.
Slightly different, yeah. But as far as I've never struggled with, I kind of learned Markdown from GitHub, and every time I've used it, it's been similar to that. So yeah. Right. The next thing was, does everyone remember a small event called WordCamp San Francisco? It was the big WordPress calendar event. It was the first ever WordCamp. And last year they announced it was going to be dissolved, and instead they would create something called WordCamp US. And since then it's been very quiet. And people were like, is it even going to happen? And finally they've started accepting applications. So this probably isn't relevant to us in the UK, but it really is important on a global scale because the American US WordCamp is stolen from, if you like, the European idea of WordCamp Europe, which this year is in Seville in about 2 weeks' time. The WordCamp in America should be the biggest probably in the world, but they haven't yet picked a venue. Things seem to be going not as well as originally planned, and it's a real shame that the San Francisco one sort of faded away in the way that it did and didn't set up a proper replacement. I always get the live stream for the American one. It's always been an ambition to go to the American one. We were going to hopefully go this year, but they haven't told us when it's going to be. So if anyone's looking out for that, then just keep an eye out. And hopefully it'll be somewhere, maybe not Las Vegas, but it'll be somewhere where the favourites at the bottom are there. So we've got Chicago, Vegas, Kansas, Houston and Dallas. It would be great if it was in Houston or Dallas, because that's where WordPress was originated in Texas. So that's nearly done. Come on. I'm having a problem with Firefox's tab system in full screen. So, Carl Hancock, did anyone groan then? Because Dave's talk earlier about the customizer was great, yeah? I think we can all admit the customizer is a very solid way to manage your website. The problem is, for a lot of developers at the moment, they're being forced into using it. So Dave mentioned now in 6 months' time, and this was in April, all the themes on the repo need to be converted. And I think that's a good thing. We need some sort of system that everyone knows how to develop for and everyone knows how to use. Recently, menus, so menu management in WordPress, we've all done it. You've got the menu system under appearance and you drag and drop pages in. They're going to put that in Customizer. And they're going to put that in Customizer, and that'll be the only way that you'll be able to do it, or at least the de facto way. And for some reason, a lot of the community developers are up in arms about this. They're saying they don't want it, they don't like it, they don't think that it works. They think that it's just a way of a lot of people that like Customizer pushing it onto people that perhaps don't like it. So Carl wrote this post about how, do you remember Windows 8 had that Metro, got rid of the start menu, just wasn't usable, but they were like, we'll do it anyway because we think it's the best thing to do, and they've spent between Windows 8 and Windows 10 trying to fix that. So it's a great post. Again, I'm not sure I agree with a lot of the stuff that's written here, because I think putting the menu customizer in Customizer makes sense, but Carl doesn't, and Carl's, by the way, is the founder of Gravity Forms, which is, if you've used Forms in WordPress, you've heard of it. So it's a great post, and it just again shows that as a community, WordPress does listen to everyone involved, no matter how crazy it sounds, because these people, there are people who want the customizer in WordPress, and there are people who really don't want it, and there are people who feel like they're being forced to use it, and people who are really in love with it. And this is a very, very long post about what it is, and as you can imagine, all the comments are very controversial. It's a great read, and it gives you a good understanding that at least there's a discussion going on about it. Personally, I think it'll happen anyway, but at least we've got a discussion. So, anyone read that? Any comments?
Just one thing, I think really it's something that's like, these guys obviously that built a business around WordPress don't have a choice, because when you create a business around WordPress, kind of stuff, you automatically sign a contract that you say like, my business model can change any moment, because WordPress will sort of like say from high up on kind of stuff, this is how things need to be done and you need to move with it kind of stuff. So they already know this. The fact that they're pushing and screaming about it is sort of like,
yeah,
it should be new.
they're involved in the community,
Yeah.
and it is democratic to an
I mean,
extent.
WordPress wouldn't just put this out and just say, like, this is the customizer, use it, kind of stuff. They'll have done this sort of focus group, they'll have done the market research and found out that this is sort of like the way that they want to go.
I mean, it's great. They talk about Squarespace quite a lot in this post. If you've ever used Squarespace, it's like a website builder that is very similar to the customizer in a way.
Yeah.
And we'll look at some in a minute, but WordPress is a million miles away from Squarespace. Squarespace is a very particular product for a very particular audience that WordPress isn't. I mean, we're a WordPress agency that build sites where clients rarely change anything. We don't want clients to upload a new logo or change a background colour, because it's a finished product when we hand it over. But there are certain times when they need to interact with the back end, and I prefer them doing it through the customizer than any other means. So.
I'll just tag on the end of that there. There's been a post on WP Tavern last 24 hours. I think what's happened with the decision to make all the themes customizer only in 6 months' time, there's been a complete, not a complete reversal, but they've come out and said that they're now taking a look at the entire process of having themes accepted and how they review it. So they've actually launched, there's 3 different surveys. There's a theme review survey, a usability survey, and a finding a theme survey. So I think there's been so much mixed kind of review. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so basically they're
reviewing the entire theme process now as a result.
Have complained, so they're going back out, and they'll probably do more surveys and realise that the vocal community aren't as powerful as the overall majority. So
they're at least taking a step back to, although they haven't explicitly said that the customizer mandatory thing has been reversed, they've just said that we're looking at the bigger picture.
Wonderful, right. So finally,
another thing to note on customizer stuff is that, let's say that they do merge the menu stuff in and they do remove the existing menu entry, the existing menu functionality was never in core, it was actually stolen from New Themes, and that plugin still exists, so if you want you can download and install it and get it back. Might not be exactly the same, but
I think the only difference was it wasn't accessible through New Themes. You couldn't use, the UI was incredibly inaccessible. So.
But if you're okay with that, then otherwise you're buggered.
So yeah, again, I really enjoyed the one about the customizer going in that Dave mentioned, and also the new menu stuff, because it shows that as boring as WordPress sometimes feels, when something like that is proposed, everything kicks off and it gets a lot more exciting. So, this was the last one, and I just read this because we've been using a plugin recently called Add to Any, which is a social sharing plugin for WordPress sites, and it basically adds your little icons at the bottom of the site, and it's great, it's easy to use. But the problem with these plugins is, and any front-end developer out there that will complain, they add their own JavaScript, their own style sheets, and they slow the shit out of your website. I mean, we've managed to negate a lot of that by using scripts that combine all CSS and all JS into a single theme, and also you can override their custom images using sprites. So on a couple of projects we've managed to negate a lot of the issues, but this post goes through all the social, or the more popular ones, and basically shames them. So what they've done, they've tested some of the plugins, and they've given them a baseline speed and how many requests. And the one that I mentioned, Add to Any, is incredibly, 47 requests and an 811 million. Just, this is one, again, that we use because it's easy to integrate, but it comes bottom in all of the benchmarks. So really great from a performance point of view to be able to read that someone's done the work. And I've got to be honest, I've never heard of most of these. I've never heard of Monarch or Sharify. So the fact that we were using Add to Any, and it is so beefy, might lead to a change. So the point is, if you want to get some sharing buttons on your blog, and I wouldn't recommend it unless your client really wants it, because there's evidence that no one ever uses them, but anyway, that's a different discussion. Then make sure that they're not significantly slowing down your WordPress site. So again, I mean, look at this, 1.8 meg just to download some share buttons. That's the size of a page. So that is, however, called ultimate social media. If it wasn't under 10 meg, then I'd be disappointed.
The irony is that the engagement with these plugins is so low. It's like, in most cases, less than 20%. So why slow the page down?
I like that this one, although it's a great post and everything, it just says 22 shares.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It just... look at that, yeah. It's not always doing everyone's time.
Yeah, and it's really in depth. There's a few comments, but no, great. I really enjoyed reading that, and I've never heard of this new WP Rocket, which seems to be all about speeding up your WordPress website. So that's great.
What was that claim then? We're the fastest ever.
What the?
It's the fastest WordPress caching plugin.
According to this empirical data,
Yeah.
WordPress has never been so efficient.
No, just go back.
The back.
Yeah.
At the
It's
top.
official.
Well, yeah.
On their certain.
Oh, so someone called WP DevShare has
It's fast.
compared all of these, and they've won, basically. So the one I've been using is Supercache, which is the one that Automatic inherited or work on it, and it seems to work great. So yeah, it's pretty close to that one. Yeah. Anyway, that's going off on a tangent. So site builders then. For those of you that were hoping to get a little bit more of a demo on how these things work, I apologise in advance. The problem with site builders is they come in so many different shapes and forms that you can't really demo them all unless you spend a significant amount of time developing different websites to serve the purpose. So all I'm going to do is go through some of the most popular ones, and I'm going to start with this one called Layers. Now LayersWP.com is a brand new site builder that actually uses the Customizer API. So going back to the Customizer again, if you look at this screenshot here, you can see we've got the Customizer over here. And although the contrast on this isn't great, this is something that they've introduced into Customizer, which is a full panel customization system that allows you to do things like upload images to sliders, create new columns for layouts, not just change text colors but also content on pages, and have a full page build experience. And Layers claims to be the only site builder that is of this space which is built into WordPress. So although it's a plugin that you have to add into WordPress and then you have to build on top of, that makes it cleaner, because it's like Jesse was saying, why use a plugin when you can code it yourself? Because if you code it yourself, it might only be a couple of lines of code and you'll be in full control of it. And that's what their whole point of sale is. Use Layers rather than using some of the competitors. And I think it looks great. It says it's a joy to use, but there is a demo option. I didn't want to get into that because you've got to really use it yourself to understand it. And
I've had a play with this.
what they've tried to do as well. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I've had a play with it. Theme Forest is starting to adopt it in terms of sort of like themes that they're introducing onto the marketplace.
Yeah.
And also, interesting enough, I always talk about new themes. ADP now is one of the co-founders
Yeah,
of this.
yeah.
Sort of like he's obviously left Blue Themes, but he's now sort of like obviously gone into the plugin market.
Yeah, the company behind this is they're called Obox Themes, and they were also based in South Africa along with Woo Theme, and they built this as a way to power their themes. And you can buy extensions, child themes, and different themes that essentially work with the platform. But as a developer platform, it's also pretty good. It's totally free to download and use, but unless you're a developer, if you install it, you're not going to get anything out of it. So I would highly recommend that one because it appears to be, at least on the surface, using built-in WordPress code and the customizer methodologies. As we go back to, where's the screenshot? Yeah, as we go back to the screenshot there, it kind of looks like the customizer. Others, however, are very different. So this is one called Visual Composer. And I'm going to try and ramp this up. So you can't really see it, unfortunately, because of the contrast on the screen. Let me see if I can ever play around with this while it... This is more difficult than I imagined because of the image. I'm going to get this slide.
Yeah, that's
What is it that's causing the...
contrast, I think.
It's got a bit of contrast. Oh yeah, I can see it's coming through. That's it, Dave, you better run.
It's not great.
It's not helping, is it?
Yeah.
Basically, what you can't... Let me describe it to you as if I was a commentator. This box here is a WYSIWYG editor, and the idea with Visual Composer is you create blocks on a page in columns. So you've got a 12-column grid, you drag a box, say half of that size, so that's what they're doing here, and then they choose from different elements to go in. So one of those elements might be a text box, one might be an image, one might be a form field where you can fill in a newsletter. And the idea is that utilising their system, you can build or design a website's homepage without hiring a developer designer. It's all built into WordPress. And I bought a very early version of this, must have been 2 years ago, something like that now. And it is quite good, but it's incredibly difficult to use. The code isn't very compliant, and it only works with certain themes that have been developed for it. So as a promise to users that it's going to be an all-in-one site builder, it's not really true to its nature, but it is incredibly popular. If you buy a theme from Theme Forest now, a lot of them do come with this bundled into it. So you get this sort of functionality built in, so you can drag and drop stuff around. So that was that one, and that was called Visual Composer. And in less than 10 minutes, you can build a page. The next one is something called Site Origin, which is a powerful enhancement to the WordPress system, apparently. Now, I quite like this one because, number one, it uses the WordPress backend, and it's a bit more developy, if you like, than Visual Composer, and it's a lot more restricted. So what you can do with this, you, again, like Visual Composer, you can build in certain elements into blocks. So you can say, if you've got a 12-column grid, you can have a 6-column and a 6-column next to each other. One can be an image, one can be text. And you do this via widgets. So you say, let's add some text, and then you drag it in, and these widgets are just WordPress widgets. So if you can create a new WordPress widget, or if you can use an old WordPress widget that exists already, then you can incorporate it into the Site Origin Builder. And the only difference is when you're editing a page or a post, this is a little bit different to Visual Composer. Visual Composer tries to say that it can make you build your entire website just using it. This is more about creating custom pages within your content. You know, like a landing page, like a product page, that sort of thing, where you can just drag and drop stuff in. And you get all of these widgets built in, and some of them you've got to buy, and some of them you can develop yourself. I know a couple of agencies that have used this plugin and expanded on it, and they say it's a lot easier to use than some of the competition. So the idea is that you can code it into your own CSS grid system as well, so you don't have to worry about the grid system that it comes with. But you can see there that you've got the ability to drag and drop whatever size ratios you need. So here we've got 4 columns and they're completely sporadic. And it does, again, it comes with a number of themes. So that's another one, probably better than Visual Composer from a developer's perspective, but still a little bit complex. I don't think there's anything else in the video that's really worth showing. So that was Site Origin. Velocity Pages is another one that's a bit different. This is more something where you would set up a site built with Velocity, and you would set up all of these editable regions, so for example you'd say, right, that's an editable bit, that's an editable bit, all these are editable, but you can't really manage it in the same way that you can with Visual Composer by dragging and dropping things in. But you can move things around, you can reorder stuff, and the idea is that you're giving, although this can be configured to do some of the more in-depth stuff that the other site builders can do, Velocity Page is more for handing a client a site that is flexible enough so they don't have to call you up if, for example, you wanted, if they all of a sudden wanted to put that above that, they can just do it. And that's, you know, that's something that's easily done with Velocity Page. And Velocity Page is labelled as a front-end editor, so all of the stuff in the front end, you're never going to, so you log into WordPress and you do everything from the front end. You don't go to WP admin to do it. And I think Velocity Page as well was built by some WordPress core contributors, so its code base should be a little bit more friendly to developers than some of the others. And you can see from this demo that you do get a lot of control, but I think all of that control is given to you through the development. So this is an example where they're just putting a video in. So yeah, Velocity Page is a good one. Has anyone used it or heard of it? I know it's been around for quite a while and it seems to have matured quite a bit since I got it.
It looks like they're just taking some like Dreamweaver, Dreamweaver, yeah, there is regions and things like that.
Oh, those Hashelon days.
Do you remember Dreamweaver? What?
Really? We're still using it?
So yeah, I mean, this is again. It's all about sort of these edit. If you remember,
I've been using it 10 years.
Okay.
The other plugins, they were sort of you drag stuff in, and they were none of the others had this sort of beautiful stuff. So,
Is it 8?
what metal?
Which version of it? Is it 8 was the last version? Or more?
No, it's not really the macrometer. Don't forget root anymore.
Okay, the last one
Is it
is,
X anyway, isn't it?
has got a very interesting name.
Oh, yeah.
Beaver Builder. And apart from the interesting name, it really is just another extension of what people have already done. So it's like, I emailed you the new text, can you change it tomorrow evening? Beaver Builder will save your life because your client can change it without you. That is a sales pitch. So the sales pitches of all these plugins are either you can build a site with no technical knowledge, and that's what some of the first ones like Site Origin potentially, and also Visual Composer. So they were aimed at the user. These are aimed at developers saying, you know how awkward it is when your client wants to just move something and you've got to log into the theme, you've got to commit new code because they just want a bit of text changing or things moving around. Well, why not let them do it? Why not let them have the ability, but also give them control so they can't screw things up? to change things like that. So there's a payoff between, are these being built for users or are they being built for developers? And the ones that are being built for developers are pretty good, like this one, and also Site Origin, because they give you the ability to lock down the components that you can give to that thing. So the question really is, how far will Composer go as a built-in component in WordPress so that it can do all of these things as well? I think if it was my money and I needed to bet, I would say use Composer, learn Composer.
Customizer.
Sorry, Customizer, sorry, thank you Matt. Customizer, because it's a core component of WordPress, and as great as all these plugins are, Customizer will probably catch up or succeed them in some way. It might never be as easy to use as this looks, but let's remember that all these videos are all an ideal scenario. Like I said earlier on, I've used Site Origin and I've used Visual Composer. They're not as easy as it looks on screen. So I've never used the Beaver one, because I picked it honestly because it had the silliest name. And, but it does look quite good. So I would again go back to the idea that if you're using these, great, but let's try and look at stuff like Layers, which is expanding WordPress's customizer at least. At least it's doing that. And it's not building more bulk into WordPress. So Layers is probably the winner from a developer perspective, but as I said before, if you install Layers as a user, you get nothing. It needs to be built on top of it. So that was a whistle-stop tour of all the WordPress site builders, or at least a choice few that I've picked out. There are about 100 others, but they were the best ones. And also the WordPress news. So I will see you all in 2 months' time, sometime in the second week in August, probably on a Saturday after the feedback we've got today, for our WordPress 5-year anniversary hack day. And if you've got any ideas, any feedback, then you can get my email address from the WP Sheffield website. I've been Kim Jones, thank you, good night.